All right, today we're going to be diving into a topic that I think a lot of people are interested in, but probably don't have a great grasp of, and that is metabolic syndrome. We're basing our deep dive today on a conversation between Marco Antonio Ruggiel and Dr. Jackie Lopez on his podcast. And Dr. Lopez is a medical doctor who specializes in preventing metabolic disease. And what's really interesting is she actually experienced metabolic syndrome even as a thin and fit medical student.
Yeah, she did.
Which really, I think, challenges some of the common assumptions about metabolic syndrome, right?
It really does.
That's not just about weight.
Just about, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And her story really highlights how easily it can go undetected.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's unpack, what is metabolic syndrome? It's not a single disease, right? It's a cluster of conditions that occur together, which increase a person's risk of developing serious health problems, like heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes.
And it's becoming incredibly prevalent globally. It's not just a personal health issue. It's a major public health concern that's increasing at an alarming rate.
So what are the warning signs? I mean, how do you know if you might be at risk for this?
Well, Dr. Lopez points out 5 key red flags to watch out for. And they are increased abdominal circumference,
Okay.
high blood sugar, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, and high blood pressure.
Okay. So a lot of these, people get tested for regularly anyway as part of, annual checkups, right?
You would hope so, but
Well,
here's the thing. You only need 3 out of these 5
Really?
to be diagnosed with metabolic syndrome.
Oh, wow.
So this means many people might be walking around with this condition without even realizing it.
Right.
Especially if they don't fit the stereotypical image of someone struggling with weight.
Yeah, and this is a really important point, I think, and I think is where we need to, bust this belly fat myth.
Yeah.
Right, because I think a lot of people associate metabolic syndrome with just, being overweight.
Right.
But as Dr. Lopez points out, the most dangerous type of fat is visceral fat. And that's not always visible. It's the fat that accumulates deep inside, surrounding your organs. So even if you're thin, you could still have an unhealthy amount of visceral fat.
Right. And the key here is that visceral fat is metabolically active. So it releases inflammatory compounds directly into your bloodstream, which can trigger a cascade of negative effects throughout your body.
So it's not just about aesthetics.
No.
This fat is literally, increasing your risk of developing serious health problems.
It's basically like having a low-grade fire smoldering inside, constantly stressing your system.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to what happens when we take in more calories than we burn, especially if we aren't physically active.
So excess calories, coupled with a lack of movement, means that fat overflows from our fat cells and ends up in places it shouldn't be, like around our vital organs.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is exactly what happened to Dr. Lopez, even as a slender medical student. Years of long shifts, poor sleep, and not prioritizing exercise led to this hidden buildup of visceral fat.
And I think that's a really powerful message for people to hear.
Yeah.
That even those small, everyday choices can have a significant impact on our health over time.
Absolutely.
And she was experiencing those symptoms of chronic inflammation, like that bloated feeling after meals, digestive discomfort, or that gotta unbutton my pants tightness. I think we've all been there.
And what's even scarier is that chronic inflammation often doesn't have obvious symptoms in the early stages.
Oh, wow.
So many people brush these off as normal, not realizing the potential long-term consequences.
Yeah, that's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And what's, even more surprising is that, and frankly, I think concerning, is what she reveals about medical training. She shares that many medical professionals don't receive adequate education on nutrition and healthy habits.
Yeah, so this lack of focus on lifestyle factors might explain why some doctors may not prioritize these crucial elements in preventing and managing metabolic syndrome.
So what can we do? I mean, even if we're busy, what concrete steps can we take to address this?
That's a great question, and luckily Dr. Lopez has some really practical advice. But before we dive into that, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll discuss some actionable steps you can take to improve your metabolic health. All right, so as promised, we're going to dive a little deeper into this idea of gut health and how it impacts metabolic syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think a lot of people hear about but don't really understand how it connects to things like metabolic syndrome.
Right. Well, Dr. Lopez's experience is a perfect example of this. She realized that, years of stress, unhealthy eating habits, and disrupted sleep had actually taken a toll on her gut bacteria, and this led to an imbalance known as dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis. Okay, that sounds a little scary. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so think of your gut as this complex ecosystem with trillions of bacteria. These bacteria are collectively known as the gut microbiome, and they play a crucial role in so many aspects of our health, from digestion and nutrient absorption to immunity and even mental health.
Wow, so it's not just about, like, breaking down food.
Not at all. These little microbes are constantly interacting with our bodies, influencing everything from our metabolism to our mood.
So when you say dysbiosis, you mean like this delicate balance in the gut is disrupted.
Exactly. And this disruption can have widespread consequences, including contributing to chronic inflammation, which, as we talked about earlier, is a key driver of metabolic syndrome.
Okay, so it sounds like Dr. Lopez. She noticed that her persistent bloating and digestive discomfort, which, are common symptoms of metabolic syndrome, really started to improve after she focused on her gut health.
Exactly.
So how did she, address this dysbiosis?
Well, it wasn't like a magic pill or anything, but she did incorporate probiotics into her routine. Probiotics are beneficial bacteria that can help restore a healthy balance in the gut.
So it's like adding, reinforcements to the good guys in her gut.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But it's important to remember that gut health is more than just adding good bacteria. It's also about creating an environment where those beneficial bacteria can thrive.
Okay, that makes sense. So what else did she do besides probiotics?
Well, she made several key lifestyle changes, some of which we've already touched upon. She started paying more attention to her diet, emphasizing whole, unprocessed foods while limiting sugar, processed foods, and unhealthy fats. She also made sure to get enough sleep, recognizing that poor sleep can negatively impact the balance of bacteria in the gut. And of course, managing stress was crucial.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Right, because chronic stress can throw the gut microbiome off balance as well.
So it sounds like she was really taking a holistic approach, like addressing multiple factors that could contribute to both gut health and metabolic health.
Right, but she also did a few things specifically targeted at supporting gut health. One of the things she focused on was increasing her fiber intake.
Okay.
Fiber acts as food for the beneficial bacteria in our gut, helping them flourish.
So that's why we always hear about eating more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. It's not just about the vitamins and minerals. It's about feeding our gut bacteria as well.
Exactly, and she mentioned another term that might be unfamiliar to some people, prebiotics.
Prebiotics.
These are types of fiber that our bodies can't digest, but the beneficial bacteria in our gut love to munch on them.
So prebiotics are kind of like fertilizer for our good gut bacteria.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. So while probiotics add good bacteria, prebiotics actually nourish the good bacteria that are already present in the gut, helping them thrive and outcompete the harmful ones.
Okay, I'm starting to see how everything is connected. So where can you find these prebiotics? Are they in special supplements?
Not necessarily. A lot of foods are naturally rich in prebiotics, things like bananas, onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, and, those whole grains we talked about earlier.
So again, it's about making those simple changes to your diet, adding in those foods that support a healthy gut microbiome.
Exactly.
What about hydration?
Oh, yeah. She definitely stressed the importance of staying hydrated. Water is essential for overall health, and that includes the health of our gut.
Okay, so it seems like a lot of the same advice for a healthy body is also great for a healthy gut. A balanced diet rich in fiber, regular exercise, stress management, good sleep, and staying hydrated. It's all kind of interconnected.
It really is.
What about people who are already struggling with gut issues? Does she have any specific advice for them?
Well, she encourages anyone experiencing persistent gut problems to consult with a healthcare professional, particularly a gastroenterologist. Getting a proper diagnosis and personalized advice is really crucial, because self-treating, especially when it comes to gut health, can sometimes make things worse.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, there's just so much information and misinformation out there about gut health these days. It's best to, get guidance from someone you trust. So just to kind of recap, it seems like gut health really does play a significant role in metabolic syndrome, and there are actually some concrete steps we can take to improve it.
Absolutely.
But how does this all tie into, the bigger picture?
That's a great question, and it's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the broader implications of what Dr. Lopez has shared, especially regarding public health and what we can do individually to make a difference.
So we've talked a lot about metabolic syndrome, what it is, the risk factors, and even how gut health plays a role.
Yeah, we even touched upon how medical training doesn't always emphasize those lifestyle factors.
Right, which is kind of wild when you think about how much of an impact they can have.
Yeah, and Dr. Lopez's story is a great example of that. Even though she was thin and fit, she still experienced metabolic syndrome.
Exactly. It just goes to show that it can affect anyone. And it's a reminder that making those simple lifestyle changes can really make a big difference.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's talk about the big picture. Metabolic syndrome is on the rise. It's affecting people at younger ages, and the consequences can be pretty scary. What does Dr. Lopez say about tackling this growing problem?
Well, she really stresses that we need more awareness and education about metabolic syndrome, especially since, traditional medical training doesn't always focus on it enough.
Yeah, she really believes that giving people the knowledge is the first step towards prevention.
Right, and that's where her platform, Salud on Corto, comes in. It's a digital space where she makes reliable health information accessible to everyone.
That's so cool. It's like she's bridging the gap between the complex science and the practical advice people can actually use.
Exactly.
Which is so important these days, right? Because there's so much information out there about health and wellness. It can be hard to know what to trust. So, besides spreading awareness, what can we, as individuals, do to make a difference?
Well, Dr. Lopez believes in the power of individual action. It starts with taking responsibility for our own health.
Right.
And making those small but consistent changes we've talked about, like moving our bodies more, eating nourishing foods, managing stress, and getting enough sleep.
And I think those changes can have a ripple effect, right?
Absolutely.
We become examples for our families, our friends, our communities. We start those conversations about health and wellness, and we can even advocate for policies that promote healthier lifestyles.
Exactly.
It's like a collective effort.
It really is.
And as we learn more about how everything's connected in our bodies, from our gut health to our metabolic health to our mental well-being, we can start to approach health and wellness in a more holistic way.
Absolutely.
So I guess the main takeaway here is that metabolic syndrome is serious, but it is preventable. Knowledge is power, and we all have the power to make choices that support our health. Not just for ourselves, but for future generations as well.
And as a final thought, could focusing on gut health, as Dr. Lopez did, be a key to reversing metabolic syndrome and creating a healthier future for everyone?
It's a question worth thinking about. We encourage you to keep learning about your health and share what you learn with others. And remember, even small steps taken consistently can lead to big changes